The rest of the audience and the music, which is nice. I think we can start right now. Thank you. My name is Said Akman from TEPA, Turkish Economic Policy Research Foundation, based in Turkey. And we have the second session, and based on what we have discussed so far, and very nice and important contribution from the first group of panelists, we continue with the topic. And before we start, of course, we have very distinguished guests and panelists here who will share their views, but only confined to 5 minutes, unfortunately. But of course, we can just enjoy the rest of the time with our comments and questions. The session, I was informed by the organizers that will continue as planned for 90 minutes, which means that we will exceed already the hour 19, so it will be maybe 25 minutes past 7, but you will not be late for dinner. I think the dinner will wait for you, no problem. Okay, the topic about RTAs is a very important and crucial aspect of trade policy, as we discussed in G20 meetings. In the process of G20, and as we discussed in the several meetings of T20. Let me make a very short and very quick stock taking about this issue of strengthening the coordination between regional trade agreements and MTS, multilateral trading system. Well, I don't go very back into the history, but starting from Antalya Leaders' Communique in 2015, I read the words, what they have committed is to ensure bilateral, regional, and plurilateral agreements should be in consistency with and contribute to multilateral trading system under WTO. I think this is not something new. We already know about these commitments. And the trade minister's statement this month, very recently, in China, was that the minister recognized the need to ensure RTAs are consistent with WTO rules and contributes to a stronger multilateral trade system. So whatever it is that we are discussing. And also they committed that RTAs should be open to accession and include provisions for review and expansion. So what to review and who is going to review, that's also very essential. And that gives us some more tasks as T20 to talk about these. We already have the G20 Trade and Investment Working Group. And our discussions here will also help this group, the working group, trade ministers, and the leaders, of course. So what we do is a very essential thing, and we have to provide some deliverables, actually. That's what we are expected. If we gather here, this is a result-oriented activity under T20, where we are expected to bring some tangible and meaningful deliverables to help all these groups. The T20, the latest event by T20 on trade and investment, was again with the participation of all 3 Chinese institutions in cooperation with Swiss institutions in Geneva in June, which was covering also issues on RTAs. For those of you who were not here, maybe we can remind some of the issues, because some panelists were there, actually. So, going back to stock taking again, how the debate between regionalism and multilateralism evolved. Actually, there are very related aspects of discussion. From the very beginning, we started with the debate, somebody referred to Professor Bhagwati, a very eminent person, the building versus stumbling blocks. Then we had the idea of multilateralizing regionalism, and we started to talk about what would be the indirect implications or spillovers that could have been some positive implications for the rest of the countries. Then we started talking about whether RTAs could provide a public good for everyone. That is important, and we should, I think this is very much also relevant to what leaders put in the community, how to ensure that everyone benefits actually So what the WTO could do to help its members in the WTO system to provide such a global public good. And I think this debate also takes us to some further debate which we are going to talk about. Now, I had some questions before we start that could be guiding our panelists and the debate. Of course, they are not only constrained by these questions, but just to stimulate the debate. Do we have trade rules, or are the trade rules negotiated in RTA bring gains only to members or also to outsiders? How can we ensure, if we have all these RTAs, although TTIP and TPP has not passed yet, but maybe in the future we will have such kind of agreements? So how to ensure benefits also accrue to all? How to, it benefits all? Well, it could be in two different ways. According to some analysts, they talk about indirect spillovers, such as standards, would be also valuable for and beneficial for outsiders, or RTAs could provide some public goods as proposed by some institutions. There are very important projects going on, like RTA exchange in the International Center for Trade and Sustainable Development, a very distinguished institute on these matters. The second leg could be how RTA's experience can be used as innovative ideas for the future WTO talks. For example, for issues like WTO Plus or WTO Beyond issues. Could RTAs or mega RTAs become template to the WTO issues, or will further complicate the things? So how to ensure this? So the next step could be the next question: how to check and control RTAs so that they become in the multilateralized line, so, or they could be multilateralized in the future, and what role the WTO system could provide for this, what kind of mechanisms we can have, or can we instruct the RTA committee, or transparency mechanism is sufficient enough to provide this? Should we revise Article 24 or things like this, or put the RTAs under TPR process, for example? These are some ideas we have to discuss, because it's full of ideas, but we are an idea group. It's a bank of ideas. So I have these questions in mind. Of course, our panelists have other questions and very good comments. Now I start with Mr. Zhang Lei, who has a WTO chair in China in Shanghai University of International Business and Economics. I should remind all panelists for the 5 minutes.
好，谢谢主持人，保证